Okay, I'm Mike Tobin, born and bred in Bristol. Became involved in the music scene right at the very beginning as a musician, youth club band, and worked my way through until ended up in management and agency, whereupon I moved to London in 1970 because you really needed to be in Soho to do that kind of thing at that time, and took the management of Stackridge, local band who had formed in December 1969, took their management with me, built them up, relentlessly touring them all over the UK, and then finally set up a new management company of which one of the directors was George Martin, the Beatles producer, and then I was managed to persuade him to be their producer as well for one album. I'd been a typical teenager. I'd gone through being a mod and then went on to being a hippie and so on, and dare I say it, there were certain influences taking place then on one's brain. I won't go into that too deeply. And there was this whole scene that developed in Bristol, of which I was in the middle of it all, which pivoted around first the Dugout Club, and then we moved to the Granary, where we were putting on happenings, events. We had light shows, you had poets, you had local bands, you had jam sessions, all sorts of stuff like that. I had a flat in Clifton, when people could afford flats in Clifton, and it was a fabulous flat on the top floor looking over Vivian Terrace with a lot of rooms. And I had just separated from my first wife. She'd gone back home to her mum, so I suddenly had this big flat. And more and more people came to live there, and so in the end I wasn't too sure who did live there, but it changed all the time. But it was a kind of a melting pot of people, many of whom went on to huge success in other fields. It was the arts. It wasn't just music. It was photography. It was poster design. It was graphic design. We had a litho press in the lounge, and sometimes you couldn't have a bath because there'd be a washing line over the bath with paint dripping down to the bath from all these posters waiting to dry. So that all kind of snowballed and took me away from my origins, which is early rock and roll, so Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard and so on. I still love them, but there was all this new stuff that was going on which moved further and further away from original classic rock and roll. So James Warren was in a band called Dawn, Andy Davis was in a blues band called Grip Tight Thin, and so was Crun, the bass player. And that's how they all met. And they just, I don't know why, but over a pint one night they said, why don't we form a band? Yeah, okay, because they probably found they had common interest in the Beatles through to Frank Zappa. And the first I was aware of it was they came to us and said, we're ready, can we do a gig? And we had a Christmas event coming up at the Granary, which is where we'd moved from the Dugout, because we were selling out the Dugout every week. Yes, so where was I? So that's how I met Stackridge. They were called briefly Stackridge Lemon. Nobody knows what the name means. It was a figment of their imagination. So we offered them the support slot at the Christmas party at the Granary. And within weeks of that, it was when I was offered the job in London and hopped on the next train and off I went. And this particular track is a big epic piece, bit kind of Elgar, Vaughan Williams, filmic kind of music called Godspeed the Plough. The other version of it is when Stackridge finally decided to retire after something like 45 years at it, on and off. They did a tour of the UK in September to December 2015, which included amazingly a trip to Tokyo and Japan for 2 gigs, which was an amazing experience. And the last ever gig was at the Fiddlers Club in Bedminster in Bristol. It was like as if they had a big statement to make. It was like they were saying to the world, okay, you missed us, it's too late now, but listen to this. And that's what they did. They played like gods, and I've never seen so many grown men weeping in an audience, including me. And we recorded the whole thing, filmed the whole thing for posterity, And so this is the live version with what was then the final lineup of the band, 2 of the original members, plus 3 other musicians who have been working with them for at least 7 years. So that was it, Godspeed the Plough, with a gap from 1973 to 2015.